I'm very excited now to be talking to one of our favourite correspondents, Tom Sykes. Today marks the 80th anniversary of VE Day, the end of World War II in Europe. Across Britain, crowds gathered at Buckingham Palace to witness the pomp and the ceremony honouring that historic moment. King Charles, Prince William and Kate appeared on the balcony, joined by their children, in a carefully orchestrated show of unity and tradition. One figure, of course, was conspicuously absent, that of Prince Harry. Despite being one of the only living royals to have seen active military service, Harry was not invited. Instead, just days ago, he gave a blistering BBC interview that reignited his tensions with the royal family. Palace aides reportedly told the media they didn't want any Harry-shaped distractions from today's long-planned celebration. With that backdrop, we turn to the interview that now casts a shadow over what should have been a moment of national reflection. And I'm joined by the Daily Beast's European editor-at-large, the great Tom Sykes. He's our brains trust when it comes to all things royal. Tom, it's great to have you.
Thanks very much, Joanna. It's great to be here.
Well, we're very excited to have you. And I want to go back to basics, really, which is, what is Harry complaining about, and what was this particular appeal about?
So this court case was supposedly all about his security. So when Harry and Meghan stepped back from royal duties in 2020, they said they wanted a hybrid model. They wanted to be part-time royals, part-time private citizens. The Queen rejected that idea. They left fully. They moved to North America. They signed the lucrative deals with Netflix and Spotify. And
just, Tom, can you just remind us how lucrative they were? Because they were pretty lucrative, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, look, Netflix is thought to, the figure of 100 million has been thrown around. I think in reality, that's what it could be. But, you know, as with all production deals, that's contingent on delivering hits. They did deliver one huge hit, so I'm sure they got paid well for the Harry and Meghan documentary. Maybe not so much money coming out of the Polo film or As Ever. But the book was huge. I mean, it was the fastest selling book of all time.
I think it was faster selling even than The Art of the Deal.
It could well be. I mean, look, let's not beat about the bush. Those guys, you know, can make in an afternoon what the rest of us can, you know, make in a lifetime. Do you know what I mean? So, like, they've made a lot of money. They've been very successful. But is it then, when you're in the world of Montecito, is it a lot of money? I mean, I don't know, compared to what, you know, I get the feeling that they're the poor guys on the block up there. But the point is that he lost his UK security privileges, and which meant that basically in the old days, whenever Harry was in the UK, whenever he went anywhere, he was accompanied by, you know, motorcycle outriders and armed guards and all that kind of stuff. So he appealed it over and over again, and he lost the final appeal. On Friday, the Court of Appeal said, no, you know, it was they were completely right to take away your automatic security. And, you know, he was incredibly upset. And I don't know, it felt like a bizarre moment to lash out, you know, straight after this sort of legal defeat that had cost him millions of dollars, and that, you know, he says prevents him from ever coming back to the UK. I mean, it's all, you know, typical Harry, bullheaded, rushing in, very overdramatic, very kind of like, I can never do anything ever again, you know, and all that kind of thing. But yeah, so he thinks that because he was born with what he calls inherited risk, he says that when he comes back to the UK, him and his family should just get armed top-level guards. And the palace, well, not the palace, but technically this body called Ravik, but I think we all know, you know, the palace are involved. They say, buddy, if you want to come back, you've got to give us 30 days notice. And if you're invited, we will give you security protection.
Well, why can't they just invite him? I have to say, this sounds like a sort of weird, petty family argument that's somehow playing out at large. If I were a parent of a child who was facing any kind of risk, I wouldn't care about picking up their security bill. So why is the palace so determined not to pay for him? Because his mother was killed being persecuted by paparazzi in that terrible accident in the Paris tunnel going back now to 1997. So I can see why Harry would want security. And we know there have been threats against his life because I think in the documentary, or it was either in the documentary or the book, he talked about killing people when he was posted abroad, right?
Yeah, yeah. Look, there's no doubt that there is a completely reasonable case to say that Harry, who's, as he says, was born into this position, should have top-level security whenever he wants. The thing that I think just astonishes me about this whole thing, I remember being called up by an ally of Harry's last year, who was going on and on about it was so unfair and the king could click his fingers and take it away. I remember saying to this person at the end of it, do you really think that Buckingham Palace, with everything that Harry and Meghan have done, all the conflict, do you imagine if Harry had full-time security for him and his family today, when the focus is supposed to be on VE Day, it means that Harry could have rocked up at Heathrow Airport and gone and opened a new wing of Battersea Dogs Home. Do you know what I mean? Now, I'm not saying he would have, but as things are structured now, basically the royal family have an enormous amount of control about when Harry can come back, which is basically never.
So they're basically saying they don't want him back.
They're not, because they're saying, oh, this has nothing to do with us. This is an independent body that made this finding. But I think there will be a lot of people who have sympathy for Harry when he says, this is a good old-fashioned establishment stitch-up, which is what he said in the interview.
I have had it described to me, once people knew about the facts, that this is an good old-fashioned establishment stitch-up. And that's what it feels like.
What astonishes me is that Harry, having been in that institution for all those years, having seen how ruthless they are, how determined they are to control the narrative, thought for one moment that it would be anything other than an establishment stitch-up, quite frankly.
So, Tom, what is it exactly in the interview that he said that was so provocative?
Well, it's one thing to say, I'm upset that I've had my security taken away when I'm in the UK and I believe I deserve it. And I think a lot of people have sympathy with that. But then, typical Harry, getting over-emotional, over-dramatic, he launched into this extraordinary tirade. He at one stage said that there were figures in the royal household who wanted the same thing that happened to his mother to happen to him, that wanted history to repeat itself.
That sounds so conspiratorial. Who is he talking about?
Well, he hinted that they were two retired people, which seems to suggest that they were the private secretaries of the late Queen.
And he's literally trying to suggest that they want him to die.
He is basically saying, these people want me dead. And interestingly, this is a kind of conspiracy theory that's been around in the so-called Sussex Squad for quite a long time. Very interesting to see Harry sort of giving it rocket boosters. The thing that he said that really, really upset the palace was he said, I don't know how long my father has left.
Because he has cancer.
Has cancer. Now, look, the reality is that everybody knows that the succession plans are gearing up. No one's really expecting Charles to live, more than 3 or 4 years. And I mean that in the context of that when he came to the throne, people definitely felt that he could live till he was the age of his mother, who was 94, or his father, who was 99. So people definitely thought there was kind of 20 years of the King Charles era. And I think people much more now think it's, going to be like a 5-6 year reign, something like that. But what Harry said was, he said, I don't know how long he has left because he won't speak to me. To say that on the BBC, for the King's son to say that on the BBC, when the palace have literally spent the last year going, the King's fine, he's going to be fine, he's going to carry on working, because, and then look, everybody knows, Charles himself has made jokes about it, and he's made less, he said, I hope I will survive. He said all these kinds of things. Charles is very aware that he has cancer. He is having weekly treatment. But the public perception, the public messaging has been, let's not let the fact that this narrative about my health and my story just detracts from the work that I want to do. So let's all just, put on a brave face and get on with it. And to have your son go on the BBC and say, I don't know how long he has left because he won't speak to me. It was just extraordinary. Who the hell is advising this guy? I mean, also, who would do an interview on one of the worst days of their life? Who thinks that is a good idea? I know what, I've had a really terrible day, a really upsetting day. I've just lost $2 million. I've just been told I can never get back to the country of my birth. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to give an interview to the BBC. You know, you're going to look angry. You're going to look bitter. And I know that there's probably an argument that he wanted to get the narrative out there and all of that. But
So, the basic question, Tom, why can't he just pay for his own security?
well, exactly. I mean, he can. He can totally pay for his own security. He can pay for a nice private house, and he totally could. But he's backed himself into a corner now because he's saying, I can't come. I can't come. They're trying to control me. So if he suddenly goes, well, actually, I can come, and just turns up, it sort of exposes him as, you know, having exaggerated matters, shall we say.
So when was the last time that Harry's children, Lilibet and Archie, saw their grandfather, who is, after all, the King of England?
I mean, it's really, really awful, but Lilibet has only met Charles once during the Platinum Jubilee.
And she must have been a baby at that stage, wasn't she?
For like 20 minutes, I believe. I think that Archie, you know, has had a bit more contact, but definitely not since the Platinum Jubilee. You know, nothing. And it's just like, I just keep thinking, like, are they going to turn around one day and go, Mum, Dad, is my grandfather the King of England?
It's good. That's also going to just be a surreal moment, isn't it? So, Tom, you broke a very good story last week about William being determined that when he becomes king, he will strip Meghan and Harry of their royal titles. Can you just give us a bit more detail?
William absolutely loathes Harry. He despises Meghan. Him and his circle completely blame Meghan for what has happened. William feels so betrayed by Harry. They had such a close bond as kids. Like, people who knew them when they were kids, you know, describe this incredibly close bond, the terrible tragedy with their mother, and there's the sort of weird, slightly distant father, you know, that actually Harry captured so well in his memoir, Spare. You know, it's the most brilliant. The first third of that book, I would say, is one of the best books ever written. And if Harry had stopped after the first third, it's so brilliant. It describes being at Balmoral. And Charles, it's like you open a door and you'll accidentally knock over Charles because he's behind it doing a headstand because he's in the headstand. And, you know, there's waiters arriving while they're having with the fish fingers under the silver cloche that they pull off with the fish fingers, you know, and it's all so brilliant. But just, sorry, I've got off the point. But yeah, so they had this, they were so close, those guys. You know, in the hacking trial, we got to hear all these phone conversations between them and taking the mickey out of each other, just so close and such good mates. And it's just unbelievably sad. And so William feels basically like Charles has not been assertive enough. He understands that it's different with your kid, you know, and he respects Charles. He respects Charles's rank, is how it's often put to me. Charles is the boss at the moment, and Charles thinks it's not the right thing to take the HRH off them. Now, taking the HRH off them is a very, very easy thing to do. The monarch could effectively just say, I am removing the HRH from these people. It would just be an edict or a proclamation. Taking the title, the Duke of Duchess of Sussex, is more difficult and will not be done. Like, there are plenty of dukes and duchesses, but there's very few people with the title HRH. Very, very few. You know, so it is a real thing. And the problem is that Meghan, they agreed with the Queen that they would stop using the title, full stop. They just agreed, we will not use the title anymore. But Meghan has started using it again. And this is a massive insult. It's a massive slap in the face. It's very provocative. It's a big rattling of the cage. And it's also kind of weird, like, you know, like the whole irony of the whole Meghan thing of like how awful the royal family were, and yet, you know, wants to be an HRH. And by the way, I have no doubt that multiple people in the royal family, in the royal household, were, you know, prejudiced towards Meghan.
And bullying towards her. I mean,
towards her. Were, yeah.
I mean, Tina Brown makes the very good point in her book, The Palace Papers, that Meghan and Harry didn't seem to know what they were doing when they gave up the very thing that made them special, which is they were members of the royal family, because now they're just like any other C-list celebrity scrabbling around for something to make them relevant, when all along they had this exceptional, unique title. And certainly in As Ever, Meghan's new show on Netflix, there's a moment which I know we've discussed where Mindy Kaling calls her Meghan Markle and says, well, Meghan Markle, kind of look at you. And Meghan goes, actually, it's Meghan Sussex. It's Meghan Sussex, which feels unnecessary, actually, to slightly dress down your friend over giving you the wrong name. Can they still use the name Sussex if they lose HRH?
Yeah.
They
So,
can.
I mean,
Okay.
that's completely fine. Like, that is not unusual. Like, you'll often, or Eddie Norfolk, or do you know what I mean? All that kind of
So
thing.
bizarre. English people
Yeah.
are so bizarre. These traditions are so odd. They're so odd.
And that is normal. So the Sussex thing is not in danger. It's the HRH bit,
It's
which
the
is actually not
HRH.
actual title. It's called a style. But it's you know, the HRH is very rare. It is very valuable, and it is very dangerous if it gets devalued. And I think William's point is that they have devalued it and they have betrayed it, and it can be removed very easily, and it should be. And I think also for William, it's where drawing a line under the whole thing. It's like, stop going on about reconciliation. Let's just not talk about this anymore. We're taking the HRH off you. Good luck. See you later. You know, so yeah, he's going to do it. He is going to do it. And I think it will be done. I'm told it's going to be done very quickly, in much the same way as Camilla was simply suddenly became Queen Camilla after Charles
Right.
ascended to the throne. Now, Queen Elizabeth was very helpful because she said she would like her to be known as Queen Consort. So for about 3.5 weeks, she was known as Queen Consort. And suddenly she just became Queen Camilla. And that's it, because Charles just said, I am King Charles and she is Queen Camilla. Well, do you want to have an argument with the king? As Harry has proved in this ridiculous court case, you know, one person not to pick a fight with over.
Right. Off with their heads. Off with their heads. Tom, as ever, you shine light on a complicated, nuanced story. Thank you. And the one thing I did think watching the interview was how good Harry's hair transplant was. I mean, for the longest time, there were pictures of him looking as if he was going to go as bald as William, who really is as boiled as an egg. And suddenly Harry's hair it's like a bush on his head.
Can I tell you what I thought looking at it? Which is, I just felt it was so incredibly sad that this could have been an incredibly consequential guy. He was such a preeminent voice for the environment, for mental health. He was such an amazing advocate, and he could have been such an influential, consequential person if they'd just been a little bit more patient. If they just bit their tongues and waited and just been patient, they could have had this, you know, roles don't have to do anything. They don't have to be interesting. They don't have to be a hit. All they have to do is wait quietly, you know, until the time has come. And I just think he's just a very, very diminished figure now. And I'm afraid he'll just become less and less important, much like Edward VIII just became less and less important. And at the end, you know, people in my generation barely even knew who Edward VIII was.
Oh dear. Well, family is complicated, right? Very complicated. And you can see clearly sibling rivalry and this extraordinary accession to the throne has destroyed what was once a wonderful relationship with two brothers. As the mother of two sons, I just feel for them. It's just so sad.
Did
so
you see
sad.
the rivalry between George and Louis today?
I did not. Go ahead.
Apps is so fascinating.
Oh my goodness, it starts early. What happened?
Day to kick off. George, who
is the older one.
Yes, who's
right, who will eventually inherit the throne after William.
Who is the heir, sort of puffs at his hair, you know, he goes and blows his hair up off his eyes. And Louis looks at him and blows his hair like you're such an idiot. And then George gives him what Paddington Bear would have described as a very hard stare and pushes his hair with his hand like that. And Louis gives him a very hard stare back and pushes his hair like that. And then George leans over and appears to report Louis father, and father seems to, yeah, all right, lads, button it.
That sounds like very boy behavior to me. It sounds very normal behavior. Maybe the last normal thing they do. Tom, you're a terrific correspondent, as always, bringing us the latest from this viperous, your word, I think, that you use from time to time, which I always enjoy, this viperous family. Thank you very much. Go back and have a drink for VE Day.
Thank you.